no store of intimate and exotic knowledge. And if not that, then how to explain your sudden blinding reminiscence of that day in 7th grade when you dove headlong for the loose ball and crashed nose first into the bleachers, and the pain was so sharp and bright you thought you had broken your brain, or the dense, long evening in the summer of the next year when you kissed Sharon Connolly and she kissed back. If these things had truly happened, if you knew them to be true and had kept each in its own special place all that while, there was memory, and it had only to be excavated from wherever it lay. Where was that place? What did it look like? Half a century after Lashley, no one yet knew. Much of the experimental data marshaled from contemporary investigations of memory have been frail and indirect, some so slight that within the intimate, intensely competitive, and feud-ridden field of memory research they are sarcastically dismissed as investigator-dependent, meaning they are derived from experiments done in particular labs, but that no one outside those labs could replicate, and few believed. Even the best of the data that is, that which came from experiments that can be reliably duplicated, is often so narrowly focused as to be nearly useless in building larger explanations of how memories might be laid down. The experiments, the good and bad alike, used to generate all these results are, even when they work, seldom designed to test questions directly. They couldn't be. This was more than anything a reflection of the fundamental difficulty of neuroscience. Lashley failed, not because he was wrong, but because he had no good way to look for his answer. The secrets are buried too deeply to be uncovered through direct observation. They literally can't be seen. The scale of the target environment, the brain, is forbidding. The 3½ pounds of the average human brain are thought to contain something on the order of 100 billion neurons. The average neuron is far smaller than the thickness of a human hair, yet it contains many thousands of proteins, acting sometimes in unison, often in opposition, almost always in complicated combinations. Almost all memory research, in Lashley's day as now, is done by implication. For most of human history, memory investigators have been forced to stand outside the brain, trying to determine what goes on in the lost world inside. The tools long did not exist to look directly for the answers to researchers' questions. Lynch was part of the generation of scientists that came after Lashley and for the first time moved the search into the complex machinery of the brain's interior. His generation has advanced to the threshold of addressing some of the great fundamental questions of the human condition. The move from outside in has finally given them a fighting chance to uncover the molecular mechanisms of the brain, to learn what actually happens when people think and talk, how they learn and remember. Playing science. That first day, my conversation with Lynch went something like this. Me. I'm interested in spending time in a laboratory like yours, where the principal focus is the study of memory. I'd like to explain how memory functions and fails, and why, and use the work in the lab as a means to illustrate how we know what we know. Lynch. You'd be welcome to come here. This would actually be a propitious time to be in the lab. Me. Why's that? Lynch. Because we're about to nail this motherfucker to the door. In the years after that meeting, I spent a great deal of time in Lynch's lab. I spoke with the other scientists and students who worked there and observed their experiments. I read papers they and others published, and I learned how to perform some of the most rudimentary tasks of their basic experiments. But what I did mostly at Lynch Lab was talk to Lynch. Or rather, I listened as Lynch expounded on mammalian biology and brain science. This was a generous undertaking on his part, as I had arrived at the lab largely ignorant of the field. Listening to him often entailed following swooping, exhilarating flights over time and intellectual terrain. "Bear with me," he sometimes said. "This might not seem connected to what we've been talking about, but it will circle back." 10, 20, or 30 minutes later, often after side trips to Planck's constant or